Anthony Tommasini from the New York Times. This is the beginning of Bach's C major two-part invention. It's actually a perfect example, as its name implies, of two-part counterpoint. Counterpoint just means point against point or note against note, meaning two lines or more than two lines of notes happening at the same time. Row, row, row your boat is a round, it's a canon. The second voice has to be exactly the same as the first voice. It's very, very strict, very sophisticated actually. The Bach invention is much freer. It's what's generally called imitative counterpoint, where the other voice kind of imitates the first one. This is just two, so it begins. Then it goes on a little journey. And so on, okay. And evolves and evolves and evolves. Now that's a relatively simple piece. When Bach wants to get fancy and more virtuosic, more complicated, he writes pieces in two-part counterpoint, but where each voice is hard and fast. And the second voice comes in about a measure later. And put them together and you get this. Now, when you start adding more lines, the form that everybody thinks about is the fugue. And then the second comes. Now the third. Fourth. What's sort of the opposite of contrapuntal music or counterpoint? Well, that's sometimes it's called homophonic music is the term, but it just means music that's tune and accompaniment. There are two things happening at once, but one supports the other. They're not equal. It's fun when it starts getting ambiguous. Now, is that counterpoint? Not really. Look what happens after those four measures. Left hand drops out. So we have four measures of counterpoint where the left hand drops out. That's always the key. When just one thing is happening, you usually know, okay, counterpoint is coming. Chopin is very much in the news this year because this is his 200th anniversary along with Schumann. But Chopin was a composer, people don't realize this, of great contrapuntal complexity and intricacy. Here's the theme from the Ballade in F minor, but you have tune and chords. When that theme comes back, a little bit later in the piece, it comes back, he adds this. The right hand has to play both of those things. So it's still a tune and an accompaniment, but mixed in the middle is this contrapuntal inner voice. When the theme comes back later, he turns it, this time, uses it to write absolute three-part counterpoint. Turns it, makes it sort of circular. But then the left hand comes in doing the same thing at first, imitating it at first. Now the left hand leads. Gets even more. Then it slips back to tune and accompaniment. Counterpoint is a little intellectual. It's a little demanding. So I think at this point Chopin says, okay, I've given you enough. I'm going to give you a break. We're going back. It's so relieving. you feel like, thank you, that it's not so intense anymore. All composers have written counterpoint. Brahms, Wagner, Prokofiev, Bartók, but Schoenberg gets a bad rap because of his atonal music. But if you listen to Schoenberg, sometimes when he's writing contrapuntal music, if you listen to it that way, it's a revelation. It's actually 3 lines of very poignant, moving counterpoint. There's a melody, da, 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 and then the inner voice, da. Beautiful. And then the bass. Now, if you try to hear those 3 things at once, it's a revelation to listen to this. Composer usually signals that it's going to be contrapuntal because only 1 or 2 things are happening. The trick is to hear it as counterpoint, to hear multiple things happening at once. And that's the challenge, but that's also the fun.